Well, welcome everyone to another episode of WA This Week. And look, double apologies. We had our technical glitches last week trying to get Facebook up, and we had a little bit of a problem this morning, but we think it's all okay. We've changed browsers, so we're hoping that Google Chrome comes through on this one. But look, thanks very much for listening. And we thought we'd do a little bit of a wrap-up for Christmas, a Christmas special, if you like. And really, talking about the last 12 months, what a change we've seen in the political settings in Western Australia. And that is really mostly, I guess, around the fact that former Premier, the Honourable Mark McGowan, retired. And, I said many times, or several times at least, I respect the community service or public service that the former Premier gave in 26 years in Parliament. That's an enormous impact on him and his family. Look, didn't always agree with everything he did, but I respect that level of community service and wish him well for the future. But certainly what his departure has done has revealed, I think, for people to see more clearly the failings of this now Cook Labor government. And they're struggling in every area. Think of the things that you really find, or the community really values in terms of where government should perform. Health, an absolute disaster, I think, for the state. Just the impact on ordinary people, the negative impact of our failing health system, the pressure that is on the health professionals, and the nurses, the midwives, under enormous stress in the hospitals. And as I've said before, in particular, the young clinicians that our hospital systems rely on, the way they're treated is disgraceful. And we've talked about that before. I'll talk about that more in the new year as well. Education. Imagine Western Australia, the wealthiest state relatively in Australia, 46% of Australia's export income, multi-billion-dollar surpluses, courtesy of the former federal coalition government's GST fix and high iron ore prices. And yet, this year we saw the government putting only partially trained teachers into schools. Now, nothing against those teachers. They're great people. And, I've got a great admiration for teachers. I've got a brother who was a teacher, and I was going to be a teacher in my early career. And actually went through part of that training before I decided to devote myself to science. But, imagine that. Imagine the stress on those teachers having to go in partially trained, but, also your students. I mean, the former coalition government had a fully trained teacher in every classroom every year, despite the fact that under the former Barnett Liberal government, the population of Tasmania came to the state in that time, 500,000 people. This Labor government's failed there. Law and order, this is distressing. Violent crime has increased more than 20% under this Labor government since they'd come into power. And the north of the state, if you go north of Geraldton, it's pretty well lawless territory. And I'm glad to see the West Australian newspaper has been picking up on that as a key issue, that, the government has simply failed and is failing to keep people safe right across the state. And of course, at this time of the year, and I know there are people who'll be watching who are really feeling this, and that is the cost of living pressures, enormous cost of living pressures on families. And, what does the government do? Do they make substantive changes to reduce cost of living impacts on people? No, they come out with sugar hits, and untargeted sugar hits. And I'll give you the example. For example, the power rebate. I got the power rebate. I didn't need the power rebate. I mean, look, if someone walks up and gives me $50, I'll go, well, sort of thanks. But, if someone comes up and says, hey, listen, I'll give you $50 or I'll give it to a person who's homeless living on the street, 100% of the time I'll say, please give it to the homeless person who's living on the street. Help them. Help the people who are in need. But what does this government do? They buy votes. They buy your support by giving everyone. So the billionaires, and there's about 6 of them that live in my electorate, the billionaires get the same energy rebate as a single mum who's doing it really tough trying to feed her kids, let alone give them Christmas presents, trying to find somewhere to live. I mean, what a farce that you've got a government. And so they've come out and done it again. Look, I'll give them applauded The carers payment, many carers do it really tough, and so they're targeting a top-up payment to carers. I don't think there are many people in that carer category that are in the billionaire capacity, and if they are, they don't have to worry about it too much. But the free travel to everyone, why? Why should I get free travel on public transport if I'm taking public transport? Again, target the money and the support to the people who need it. Don't come out with sugar hits just to buy popularity, to buy votes across the state. Really shows a struggling Cook Labor government when they've got to come out with gimmicks like that before Christmas. It is, and yet we know this Christmas, tonight and Christmas night, there'll be people sleeping on the streets. There'll be people sleeping rough, people having to sleep in friends' backyards or sheds because they've got nowhere else to go. So let the Cook Labor government focus on that. They say they're a Labor government, they care about people. Well, show you care by targeting your support for the people who are most in need, not buying popularity. I've dwelt a little bit on federal Labor issues. As I've said, what a circus federal Labor is. I think they are shaping up to be the worst Labor government since Whitlam, and for the same reason. They are socialist Fruit Loops, I think is the technical phrase. But, these are people who they feel that they, in their heart, they're doing the right thing, but they actually take no proper care of the people of Australia or Australia. Now, let's go through, a few of the issues that have hit. The 43% emissions reduction target by 2030, they are progressively destroying not only the energy networks across Australia, but every major large manufacturing business in Australia. It's going to get shut down by that tax, and they don't care. It'll make no difference to global carbon emissions, but it is going to make an enormous difference to the loss of high-quality jobs, high-paying jobs right across Australia, including in Western Australia. The Voice referendum, that was a shameful disgrace on the part of the Albanese federal Labor government. A referendum that they knew would divide Australia, an outcome that would divide Australia on racial lines if it succeeded. But moreover, they knew that campaign would divide Australia, pitching Australians against each other in a really sad way, and yet they went ahead with it for their own ideological purposes. Absolutely disgraceful behaviour on their part, and with a predictable outcome for that referendum, which, as you know, I was very keen that referendum did fail, but it should never have happened in the first place, and it was done for divisive purposes. The recent IR bill Labor government are trying to bring in, and I won't go through it in detail, which a time in this short forum, but again, a bill that's based on ideology without any understanding of the reality of business in the state. And just imagine, they've got, I'll go through a couple of little catchphrases, but the same job, same pay. Okay, so you've got a 6-month out apprentice fitter and turner going into a position, and the idea is they get paid the same as a 30-year experienced fitter and turner in your business. Any of you that are in the engineering game know that one person's costing you money every year and the other person's, making their weight in gold every year. And of course, you should be able to pay more for experienced people. But no, the Labor government have these ideological mantras that they want to follow in relation to that. And of course, the other one, again, these things sound emotionally appealing. Oh, well, if you work regularly in a part-time job, you should be a permanent employee. But I speak to a lot of people in small business. There are a lot of people who want part-time work. But if someone works for more than 2 hours a week, in a regular pattern, the employer would be compelled to take them on as a full-time employee. Now what that means? That means that many small businesses, especially small mum and dad businesses, they simply won't take on part-time employees because they can't afford all of the overheads that come and all of the inflexibility that comes with having to employ someone in a full-time position. So, the net result of that stupid piece of legislation that they're putting up is that people will lose their jobs. That's the Labor government for you. And of course, we've seen, it just goes from bad to worse. The release of the detainees from detention. Now, let's make a clear understanding. These are people who are guilty of serious crimes, murder, rape, child abuse. In one case, one person was a paid hitman from another country. They've come to Australia illegally, and they've been put in detention, and the government is supposed to be seeking to send those people back. Now, you might say, well, that was a court decision, not a government decision. There are two aspects to this. One, the federal Labor government knew that this decision was before the court, and they knew the court could decide to follow the current, or what was the practice of keeping those detainees in detention until an origin country or another country was found to take them, or that the decision that was made could be made, and that was to release the detainees. What preparation did they do? Nothing, absolutely zero, and no preparation. And now I think we're up to 7 of those people being rearrested for committing further crimes since they've been released. Well, no surprise. The great majority of those detainees are serious criminals. They probably haven't changed their behaviour overnight, but more particularly, the Federal Attorney General is absolutely implicit in this. One of the things the court said to the federal government is, or what in effect said to the federal government was, is there any prospect that these people will be repatriated to another country? And critically, are you still seeking to find other countries for these people to go to? And the Federal Attorney General said no to both. So the court, under law, had no choice to make the decision. But the perverse thing is, my federal colleagues tell me that then the federal government actually then continued to try to look for places for a number of these detainees to go. So, this sits at the feet of the federal Labor government. I could go on about that one, but I was late. But, what you've got is a federal Labor government protecting criminals, but not protecting the people of Australia. And you'd have to think that that's probably one of their main jobs. It is, what does all this mean? Look, it means our position has improved in the Liberal Party and our National Party colleagues. But I've made it very clear here, we take nothing for granted. It's good that I think from our perspective, it's sad that we've got the reasons for that change. But from our perspective, it means that we have better prospects coming out to the next election. We take nothing for granted. We're going to work as hard as we possibly can. We're going to present ourselves as an alternative government come the next state election and come the next federal election. And I'll continue to do that. And some of you may have seen, my pre-selection is obviously coming up actually very early in the new year. And we've seen a couple of people put their hand up, and they hope to take the seat of Cottesloe as well. And that'll be interesting to see, won't it? It's up to the party to decide who the person is that represents. But I think I have done a lot of work to justify my pre-selection and my re-election in this electorate. And I know I've got good support in the electorate because of that. And I'm very much looking forward to be your candidate, or the candidate for Cottesloe, when we come to the next state election in 2025. But it'll be an interesting time over Christmas. Look, I'm going to finish there. I hope you have a really Merry Christmas and a really Happy New Year. Take a break. I think for all of us, it's very, very easy to get caught up in the day-to-day and to worry about, different things. But this is the time of the year to step back and, in particular, spend time with the people you love. And particularly as you get older, you realise that life is very short, and that time you have with the people you love, it's precious, and especially at this time of year, which is really, really important. And on that note, I've said it before, and I'm going to say it every festive season, please drive safe. It is just such a terrible thing to see at this time of the year. So many people who are injured and lose their lives because of motor vehicle accidents. There is no journey worth your life. Have a good rest, drive slowly, don't worry about the idiots that go past you, and don't worry about passing that big truck when you're not quite sure. Just stay safe on the roads, and otherwise, as I say, I hope you have a really happy Christmas and New Year. And look, share the podcast. it's good to get the message out there. I'm really grateful for the people that are watching, and share it with your mates and get the message out. And you can send it. It's on any of the platforms, YouTube, Spotify, Facebook, just looking up Dr. David Honey. But otherwise, have a fabulous Christmas and a really happy New Year. Thanks.
All right. There are a few questions. Facebook is very shy, but TikTok isn't. Dr. Damage says, the problem with Labour and Liberal is an illusion of choice where nothing changes.
Well, I guess I'd beg to differ on that one. Look, I think that I've heard that said before, and it's actually really interesting in Australian politics. You don't have the breadth of, political positions in Australia that you do in some other countries. For example, the United States. One of the reasons for that is, this is a technical detail, but it's our compulsory voting system. Because everyone votes, political parties have to appeal to the centre, not to the extremes. In other countries where you've got voluntary voting, the parties tend to appeal more to the extremes, if you like, because they need to motivate their people to come to the polls. But I think there are very clear differences. And one of the fundamental differences is the Labor Party believes in collectivism. They believe, don't worry about the individual. Don't worry about individual property rights. Don't worry about the rights of an individual. It's only the collective right that matters. And so they ride roughshod over the individual. That's what we've seen with their planning law changes, for example. With the Liberal Party, we believe, yes, there's a collective good. But in the first place, you should look to the rights of individuals. You should look at individual property rights, for example. Yes, there are collective goods, and there are times when you have to, if you like, the collective good overrides the rights of individuals, but prima facie, it should be the individual rights that prevail. So that's a distinct difference, and I think I definitely know you've seen that in our policy, and I think you'll see that in the future. The other thing is, we run the place properly. We have teachers, fully qualified teachers in schools. We give the police the resources they need to keep people in the state safe. We don't bring out stupid policies that destroy viable industries simply to transfer jobs offshore. So I think there's a real difference, and I'm proud of being in the Liberal Party.
Miscellaneous says, LNPWA can travel to work on a tandem bike.
Well, a keen observation. Well, at least our lower house members can. I think my upper house colleagues might get a bit grumpy if they had to join us as well. Look, that was a quirk of the last election, and none of that was lost on us, but that's why we're working so hard. And I can tell you, my colleague, Libby Medham, the leader of the Liberal Party, is doing a fantastic job. And she just works like a demon out there. And I'm doing the same thing and working hard. And my colleagues in the upper house are doing the same as well. And, one of the great things about the Liberal Party is we're actually genuinely a party of members. We're not a party of unions or, self-interest groups, if you like. We've got well over 6,000 members right across the state of Western Australia. And they are just the backbone of our party, and they're out there working hard as well. So, yep, we might be few in number at the moment, but we are not daunted, and we will be presenting ourselves as the alternative government at the next election.
Labor are a massive letdown, but the LNP will never be viable for the working class.
It's really interesting you should say that, because I reckon the Labor Party has abandoned the working class. Have a look at it. The big manufacturing unions, the AMWU, the AWU, the CEPU, and the like. And by and large, I tell you, I have a lot of time for those manufacturing unions. They're pretty, tend to be pretty responsible unions, and they're just out there to represent their workers. Do you know what? The greater majority of those members are going to lose their jobs under the Albanese Labor government, because that 43% emissions reduction target is an absolute disaster. It will shut down every heavy manufacturer in Australia because of the way they've done it. I don't mind their target, but the timeline they've set of 2030 is utterly and totally impossible to achieve. And they are going to apply a massive tax to those industries when they don't achieve it, and they won't be able to. And that will shut them down. And you know what will happen to all of those jobs? You won't see 1 tonne less steel made. You won't see 1 tonne less aluminium made, which was my old world. I worked for Alcoa for 20 years. It'll all be made in China. Instead of being made with natural gas, it'll be made with brown coal that has more than twice the carbon emissions. So global carbon emissions will go up. All the jobs will go to China, and you're going to destroy tens of thousands of blue-collar workers' jobs, if you like, in Australia. That's the Labor government. Well, I tell you what, we're not going to do that. And, you know, my federal colleagues have made that very clear. You're not going to cripple Australian industry. So we do care about the workers. And I think if you are objective and look at it historically, it's a Liberal government that looks after the workers. You know what? School teachers were the highest paid teachers in Australia under the Liberal government, not under this Labor government, not under the Cook Labor government. Nurses in Western Australia under the Phillips Liberal coalition government were the highest paid nurses in Australia. You know what they are now under the Cook Labor government? They're the lowest paid workers in Australia. So don't tell me the Liberal Party doesn't look after workers. It's this university graduate-based Cook Labor government that is abandoning the workers of the state of Western Australia.
2 firearm-related questions on Facebook. Ron asks, why doesn't the Liberal Party have any form of firearm policy? And Alan asks, any update on the Liberal in WA having a firearm policy like the Nationals do?
Look, I'm absolutely certain there will be a policy going forward. And you'd know there's a bill the government have flagged. They put out a discussion paper. I mean, my colleagues, and I have made our views very clear on that. Obviously there'll be something coming to the election, but that legislation will actually be dealt with before the next election. The Liberal Party, we've made it really, really clear. There are 2 sides to that. There are ridiculous extremes in everything. I mean, if every person can have whatever gun they want, I don't think anyone would support that. And equally, banning everyone from having guns is a ridiculous proposition as well. So you've got to come to some position in between. What we've made very clear is it's bad law, it's bad legislation that makes criminals of good people. And I've had lots of chats with people, I've had lots of communication with people around the various issues with that bill. And I think the overwhelming majority of gun owners and the farmers and the recreational shooters, in particularly those people that help with culling feral animals and the like, I think they'll be very pleased by the position we have. But rest assured, we're not going to adopt some extreme position on that. We'll take a sensible position that doesn't make criminals of ordinary folk and deals with it and make sure that people who need guns for the legitimate purposes can have access to them.
Edgar on TikTok asks you to abolish the tax, please.
Well, I don't know about which tax we'd abolish. We do need some tax, because boy, all of that Social Security and so on, we certainly need. But if you're talking about the 43% emissions target by 2030 and the associated carbon tax, I've said it outright. It is utterly stupid. It will not achieve the outcomes. It is impossible to achieve the goal that they've set. It's simply going to strip billions of dollars out of industry and put it into federal Labor's pockets, so that they can waste it as they commonly do. Meanwhile, destroying large parts of our economy. So I'm all for banning that tax. Otherwise, you definitely want as little tax as you can, but you do need tax. Government's got to do things, and there are genuinely people who need help.
Victoria, Australia says, try to get the government to regulate vaping.
Vaping?
Yes.
Yeah. And I know there's a segment of folk who watch this podcast who might not like my views on this, but I'm not a fan of vaping, can I tell you? And look, my reasons are pretty straightforward on that one. It was put to me, and this was very early when this was coming in, that vaping would be a way of stopping people smoking cigarettes. 2, that it was safe. And what's quite clear is that vaping does not stop people smoking cigarettes. In fact, because nicotine my understanding is that nicotine is the single most addictive drug known to humankind. That being the case, why would you popularise such an addictive substance? I mean, at the end of the day, you're getting people addicted to something that they're then going to have to keep paying for. And very, very hard. You know, people who get addicted to nicotine, it's not impossible, but extraordinarily difficult for them to get off it. So why would you get people addicted to something that, they don't have to? The second thing is that it's quite clear that vaping does cause significant lung damage and the like. So it may be different diseases to the carcinogenic compounds you get out of. It's actually the combustion process for cigarettes, but yeah, I'm not a fan of it. So I'm a fan of regulating it. And I definitely, look, I know there are some people who smoke cigarettes and they say vaping is an enabler for me and so on, but you would not make it generally available and get people hooked on such a highly addictive drug where they're going to have to, they're going to spend their money on it and waste their money. When you've got a cost of living crisis, you know what? I wouldn't want people wasting money on an addiction instead of feeding their family.
Karen asks, are we losing Christianity and Western values in our politics?
Yeah, I reckon we are. It's quite interesting going into Parliament, into the WA State Parliament. Calling someone a Christian is an insult from the left, can I say. You won't hear that from our side of politics, but, we're a society based on Judeo-Christian principles. And yes, obviously the nature of Australian society is changing, and I think Christians represent about half the population now. But boy, if you went to Parliament, I think wouldn't be surprised to see a bill coming out of this Labor government saying we should ban all Christians. They clearly don't like them, and there are some good Christians in the Labor Party, can I tell you? And they just keep their head down. I remember when there was a debate on there was so-called abortion debate. It wasn't actually a debate about abortion. It was a debate around safe spaces around abortion clinics and the like. And the Labor members, Christian Labor members, who were really concerned about that bill, they were so bullied that they stopped turning up in the chamber. And one very senior minister, and I won't name him, I don't want to embarrass him, but one senior minister was involved in what's called the committee stage of asking questions. And the Leader of the House went up, finger-pointing, talking to him. He left the chamber and never came back. This is the Labor Party for you. Appalling behaviour. So I think you're right. I think, and look, people don't want to be Christians. They don't have to be Christians, but I'm a Christian, and I think I think Christian principles are great principles to live by. I don't browbeat people with it, and I respect the fact that there are other religions. And as a member of Parliament, I go to all sorts of other religious events, and by and large, I find people that are involved in different religions are good people. They're people who live by values. So it's a shame, I think, and a shame to see this demonisation of Christianity in particular.
Wade asks, how are the Libs polling in WA at the moment? Excited for the future?
I'm really excited for the future. Look, we're coming back to normal. We knew that that COVID period was, literally a once in a century event. And, it was really fascinating. Mark McGowan was not at all popular before COVID. Quite the opposite. He was very unpopular. You go back to early February 2020, we're on track to win 6 to 8 seats off the Labor Party. By July, we were going to lose every seat, including mine. The only thing that had changed was the popularity of Mark McGowan, and it was because of his strongman, approach on COVID, which the overwhelming majority of Western Australians supported, and that translated through not only the state election, but it also had a significant impact on the federal election as well, and affected the result for our party in the state of Western Australia. Now Mark McGowan's retired. He's clearly not as tired as he said when he retired, because he's gone on to 4 boards, I think, or maybe he's up to 5, but he's clearly got a second wind there. But him going has definitely, I think, put more of a lens on, has put a lens on the failing of this government. This is a failing state government. I mean, they're washed with cash. for things that nothing to do with what they've done, but they have no idea how to govern the state. That's becoming apparent to the people of Western Australia. I'll say it and I'll say it. I'll say it again. We don't take anything for granted. We don't think we're just going to somehow magically walk into winning more seats or walk into government. We are working as hard as we possibly can. We're going to have superb candidates. You've probably seen some of the names that are being put up, but we have a really large field of really excellent people who want to stand for the party. And you're going to see that in the not too distant future. And we expect to have a much stronger showing after the next state election.
Alan asks, what are your thoughts on the federal proposed misinformation bill and the national digital ID?
Yeah, look, I'm not too sure I'm on top of the detail of the national digital ID. But look, when governments start legislating about what you can say and what you can't say, you've got to get worried, don't you? And especially, look, we live in this cancel culture generation at the moment. And that is, if someone uses the wrong word or the wrong phrase or they look the wrong way, then, they get piled upon through social media and otherwise and get cancelled. And you see echoes of that in this legislation. I do think, look, and as I was saying before in relation to the guns, there are extremes in everything. I mean, if you've got someone out there that's, going around handing out free guns and inciting people to go and shoot whoever, that's pretty bad. I don't agree with that. I think that it would be appropriate that the police would bring that person into line. But if someone's expressing a political view, even a social view that you don't like, okay, you may find that odious. Some people might find it upsetting. There's not a reason to make that person a criminal. Go and point out, you've got the right to point out how they're wrong. And I think that's worked pretty well for a long time. There's media, the media are really tight on that sort of thing and say, hey, hang on, that was inappropriate. And that's how people get sort of pulled into line. But the idea that there's one view, and unless you express that one view, we're going to make a criminal of you or punish you in some way. No, I don't think that's right. And that's what worries me about that law. But it's that, remember, for those of you that have got endurance and have been watching this whole podcast, I talked about the individual versus the collective. The Labor Party don't care about the rights of an individual. They have this collectivist view, and that drives everything that they do. And, I support the individual. Look, I support the right for someone to say the wrong thing, and I support the right for other people to point out what they've seen as wrong. That's the sort of society I want to live in, not one where the government's defining the right or wrong view.
All right, that's the end of the questions.
Beautiful. Well, look, thanks very much, everyone. Look, have a fantastic Christmas. I'll say it at the end. Please drive safe. It'd be great if you could all be back here watching this in the new year. Thanks very much.